What about number 1? Who is the head? Any problems there? I hope not. Scriptures are pretty clear on that, right? Christ is the head. So we're going to walk through these. There's 1 head, 2 authorities, 3 servants, 4 marks, and 5 gifts. That's how we're thinking about them. So 1 head, who is Christ himself. What about authorities? What do we see? So the Word.
Spirit.
The Spirit. Everybody okay with the Word and the Spirit being the 2 authorities of the church? Are we okay with Christ being the head and the Word and the Spirit being the 2 authorities? Any questions on that as far as the authority? Feel free to open up. Like, we're okay. This is a lab here. We can discuss these things. Number 3, servants. Who are the servants that we see in the church?
Elders.
Okay.
Deacons.
All right, 3 servants, elders, deacons, and the priesthood. Again, here I think it's helpful to Josh's question. The elders are set apart, right? They're gifts to the church, but they're also servants of the church and servants of the kingdom. They're to lead out in serving, even. 1 Peter 5, lead out in serving. Deacons literally means servant. And then what about the priesthood? What's significant about the priesthood? How are the priesthood servants?
By carrying the word out into the nation.
Carrying the word?
Being Christ to the world around them.
Yeah. Other thoughts?
The high priest was, at least in Jesus, one of the things he did was intercede for us. So the priesthood kind of implies prayer.
Yeah, so as priests, we serve by interceding on behalf of the world. Right? It's a good thought. We even see this in the Old Testament in Exodus 19, almost the exact same language as what we see in 1 Peter 2. Just this idea of the priesthood being representatives, in a sense, the intermediaries for God. So these 3, so what we see is the church is made up of servants. Now, let me ask you, is that the type of church that you attend? Just asking, just throwing that question out there. Is it 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 people serving the church, or is the church made up of servants? And I think going back to our previous modules, 3/3 can help in starting injecting some better DNA into that, where the church, we're working together to advance the kingdom. So anyway, just think about that. There's a lot of passages here. Go back and wrestle with them. 4 marks of maturity. I'm probably going to have to help you with the language here, but give me a gist. What do we see in the first piece? Acts 6, 1 through 7, Hebrews 4, 12, and 16. What are some themes there? What are they doing in Acts 6? Prayer in the Word. What specifically are they are highlighting prayer in the Word? Well, what are they doing in order to do that?
Meeting needs.
They're meeting needs. What else do they do?
They're full of spirit and wisdom.
They're full of spirit and wisdom. What else do they do?
They're delegating.
Okay, they're delegating authority. So how does that happen?
They self-govern.
So they appoint deacons, correct? Yeah. And then what about Hebrews 12 or 4, 12, and 16? What's going on there? So we see in both of these passages, ministry of the word in prayer, right? A reliance on the Spirit, but specifically from a descriptive point of view in the book of Acts. And I'm going to use this language of self, 4 selves. It's going to be self-governing. What we mean by that is, in order to accomplish the mission, something had to change. And so based upon Christ as the head and the authorities we have right here, they were able to adjust what they were doing in order to move the mission forward. So in the book of Acts, they appointed deacons. Does everybody see that? They were able to govern themselves as a sign of a healthy church. They didn't rely on somebody from the outside, but with what they had in the Word and the Spirit, they were able to govern themselves. Y'all okay with that? You see that? All right. Secondly, what about all of these passages? They're taking care of each other, right? Giving, meeting needs. Why is that important? So sometimes fledgling churches rely sometimes on the outside to meet some needs, but in order to mature, in order to grow, they need to become self-sufficient. We need to, in our discipleship, as we talked about earlier, one of the commands is giving. We need to be giving to meet the needs of those inside the church, but also the needs of the kingdom, the needs of the mission. Self-sufficient. So we have self-governing. They become self-sufficient. That's a sign of a growing church, a mark of maturity. What about this one down here? I'm sorry about that second one. I don't know what that one is. Sorry. 1 Thessalonians and Philemon. I'm sure it was one. My mind just got distracted. 1 Thessalonians and Philemon. What do we see? They're going out. They're sharing in such a way that what? They don't have to say anything. They don't need help from the outside. They begin to reproduce themselves, right? Would you say that is a mark of maturity? That we begin to multiply? Acts 2, right? Even in the early church, we see them expanding. So we're going to call that self-reproducing. Everybody okay with that? How many of our churches are reproducing? Don't have to answer that, but think about that. Is your church that you're a part of, is it reproducing? Just a good question. All right, and lastly, what do we see here in 2 Corinthians, 2 Timothy, and in the book of Acts? All right, we've already seen this passage, 2 Timothy 3, 16 and 17. Well, what is that passage about? Sufficiency of Scripture, yeah. So, and then we even see here in Acts 17 that they are looking into the Word together. So they are self-correcting, which is similar to self-governing, right? But as they look at Scripture, they're looking at the way things are, and they begin to adjust what they're doing, what they're saying, how they're living based on the Word. So they're self-correcting. So there's probably other things we could say, but in general, 4 marks of maturity: self-governing, self-sufficient, self-reproducing, self-correcting. These 4 things are probably, in effect, a major difference from what we see from what Ross did with the Healthy Church Start. As they begin to grow, they begin to model these attributes into a healthier church. Everybody okay with that? You see that? And very quickly, as we close, 5 gifts of the church. What is it? Well, we've already spent some time. I'm not going to spend time here. We've already seen that. So just in general, we find these giftings not only in leaders, but in the priesthood. So you ask, how can priesthood be servants in the church? Well, they identify their giftings in maybe an APES type way and begin to live in their gifting. So any questions before we close this now?